The galaxy believed they had seen everything. With eons of experience and unmatched technology, they thought they understood the limits of life itself. That was until they encountered humanity, with their bizarre, almost reckless approach to survival, a skill that no logic could explain and no technology could replicate. Picture this. A state-of-the-art alien research station hovers on the edge of a supermassive black hole teeming with brilliant minds from across the cosmos. They've gathered here to study the extremes of the universe, but they're about to face a test they never expected. A group of humans arrives, tasked with a seemingly impossible mission. The humans don't bring advanced gadgets or complex plans. They come armed with coffee, duct tape, and an odd sort of calm. The alien scientists, who live by precise protocols and meticulous calculations, are shaken by what they witness. For them, every small detail, every measurement, every procedure is critical. But to these humans, even the deadliest situations are met with a shrug, a laugh, and a creative solution that no alien would dare try. This is the story of how human resilience, creativity, and sheer stubbornness would forever change the galaxy's understanding of survival. In the face of impending disaster, they watched as humanity turned every obstacle into an opportunity, every crisis into a moment of innovation. So prepare yourself for an adventure that redefines what it means to survive, as we explore the most peculiar and powerful tool humans have, a refusal to follow any rule but their own. The Galactic Research Council had always treated Earth and its inhabitants with a mixture of caution and curiosity. To many in the galaxy, Earth was a place of untamed wilderness, filled with unpredictable climates, ferocious wildlife, and constant natural disasters. A death world, they called it, a planet that defied all odds of sustaining life. Most species wouldn't dare set foot there. Yet somehow, humanity not only survived, but flourished on this hostile world. Chief researcher Talax, an esteemed scientist from the Tharak species, a race known for their calm precision and cautious approach to science, had long dismissed the legends surrounding humans. As a scientist, he valued predictability and routine. Protocols and protocols within protocols were the bedrock of his approach to every mission, and he assumed that any species capable of surviving Earth's hazards must rely on similar rigor and caution. But the rumors around humans troubled him. Stories spread across the galaxy of humans, accomplishing the impossible with bizarre tools like duct tape and treating life-or-death situations with humor. It was hard to believe. And yet, the Council insisted on inviting a team of humans to assist on a high-stakes mission aboard their advanced research station. Talax had prepared meticulously. Every possible scenario was accounted for, and every contingency plan was detailed. He was confident that, if he and his team adhered strictly to these protocols, they could control any situation, even with these unpredictable humans on board. But as he stood in the pristine docking bay, waiting for the human team's arrival, he couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. The docking bay doors hissed open, and the humans strolled in, casually chatting among themselves. Talax blinked in disbelief. The humans weren't even wearing full protective suits, just light uniforms with peculiar items strapped to their belts. Some held what appeared to be large mugs filled with a dark, steaming liquid. One of Talax's colleagues, a junior researcher named Catan, whispered in awe, "They're not taking this seriously?" "Maintain composure, Catan," Talax muttered, though he felt his own sense of control slipping. He cleared his throat and addressed the humans. "Greetings, human delegation. We welcome you to the Galactic Research Station, Tharum. Please note that strict protocols are in place for all areas of operation, as outlined in your preliminary materials. We expect compliance for maximum efficiency and safety." The human leader, a woman named Sarah, grinned and held up her mug in a mock salute. "Don't worry, Chief Talax, we're here to help. We've dealt with worse than this back on Earth." She glanced around the docking bay, taking in the complex machinery, the sterile white walls, and the vigilant alien scientists eyeing her team with apprehension. "You've got a nice setup here. Mind if we take a look around?" Talax hesitated. The human's casual tone was unnerving, and the other aliens seemed equally taken aback. "We would prefer to begin the mission briefing immediately," he said, trying to maintain his authority. Sure thing, Sarah replied, taking a long sip of her drink. Lead the way. As Talax guided the human team through the station, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between his crew's tense, methodical manner and the humans' easygoing approach. They laughed and joked among themselves, occasionally tossing questions to Talax that he found baffling in their simplicity. The humans appeared unconcerned by the high-stakes environment or the strict regulations governing every corner of the station. Finally, they reached the command center, where a complex reactor powered the entire station. This reactor was Talax's pride and joy, a feat of engineering that required careful monitoring and precise adjustments. As they entered, the humans looked around, impressed but unfazed. So this is the big reactor? One of the humans asked, raising an eyebrow. Cool setup. Cool? Talax repeated, bewildered by the nonchalant assessment. It's a carefully calibrated power source that requires exacting maintenance. Even the slightest misalignment could result in catastrophic failure. Sarah smirked, glancing at her team. Well, we wouldn't want that, but don't worry, we're pretty good with reactors. One of Talax's scientists, nervously observing from a nearby console, whispered, They seem unprepared. Should we remind them of the safety protocols? Talax nodded, addressing the humans with a sense of urgency. Human delegation, I must remind you that we follow strict procedures to ensure the stability of this reactor. Improvisation is not advisable. Sarah chuckled, a glint of humor in her eyes. Improvisation is kind of our specialty, Talax. Trust me, if anything goes wrong, we'll handle it. The confidence in her voice gave Talax pause. He wasn't used to beings who treated volatile situations with such apparent carelessness. As the humans inspected the reactor room, he observed their interactions, noting how they exchanged ideas, made light of complex systems, and approached each piece of machinery as if they were simply at a mechanic's garage rather than a galactic research station. At one point, a human named Jake noticed a panel with a faint hum and leaned closer, frowning. You guys hear that? Sounds like it's a little off. We could probably just give it a tune-up. He pulled a roll of duct tape from his tool belt, prompting audible gasps from the surrounding aliens. Talax could no longer contain his disbelief. Are you intending to apply tape to our reactor? Jake grinned. Only if it's needed. You'd be surprised how often it comes in handy. Surprised would be an understatement, Talax muttered, half to himself. The humans continued their inspection, and the aliens found themselves reluctantly impressed by how efficiently they moved through the tasks, even if they were appalled by the humans' unorthodox methods. Finally, Sarah turned to Talax with a satisfied smile. Looks good from our end. Your systems are solid. You really didn't need us at all. Talax struggled to respond, feeling an odd mix of frustration and reluctant respect. I suppose that remains to be seen. As the briefing concluded and the humans prepared to settle in for the mission, Talax gathered his team. This human behavior, we must be vigilant. Their methods are unpredictable, and we cannot afford mistakes on this mission. But as he watched the humans settle in, laughing and joking in their usual manner, he found himself wondering. Could it be that this chaotic, flexible approach was effective? No, he dismissed the thought immediately. The mission had to be handled with strict discipline. But as they prepared for the days ahead, Talax couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected and possibly transformative was about to unfold. The first task assigned to the human team was an inspection of the station's experimental reactor, a power source so advanced that only the galaxy's top scientists were qualified to monitor it. For Talax and his team, the reactor was a marvel, an achievement representing centuries of precise calculations and rigorous safety protocols. Every adjustment, every parameter had been painstakingly calculated to maintain balance and ensure the station's safety. But when the humans entered the reactor control room, they appeared unfazed. One of the humans, Sarah, peered around with mild interest and gave a short nod. All right, she said casually, taking a sip from her ever-present coffee mug. Looks pretty straightforward. Talax blinked in confusion. Straightforward? The reactor was a delicate instrument. Any misstep could lead to catastrophic failure. He cleared his throat, trying to mask his concern. Human Sarah, this reactor requires a high level of precision. Any deviation from established procedures could be disastrous. Sarah smiled, apparently unfazed by his warning. Oh, don't worry, we're used to high-stakes situations. You should see the reactors we deal with back on Earth. This'll be a breeze. One of Talax's team members, an anxious scientist named Jakari, leaned in closer to Talax and whispered, "They don't appear to be following any of our protocols. Should we intervene?" Talax hesitated. He wanted to believe that these humans, for all their reputation, knew what they were doing. But watching them move around the reactor with such a relaxed demeanor filled him with a gnawing sense of dread. As he observed, Sarah approached a panel that was emitting a low hum, tilting her head as if assessing a minor inconvenience rather than a high-stakes piece of equipment. She reached for her toolkit, and to Talax's horror, she pulled out a roll of duct tape. What are you doing?" Talax managed, his voice faltering. The idea of using such a primitive material on something as complex as the reactor was beyond his comprehension. "Just a little adjustment," Sarah replied with a grin, pressing a strip of tape onto the panel. "There, that should stabilize the vibration." Another scientist gasped audibly. You're using tape on the reactor? Surely this violates every safety protocol in existence." Sarah shrugged. "On Earth we have a saying, if it moves and it shouldn't, use duct tape. If it doesn't move and it should, use a hammer." Talax exchanged a horrified glance with Jakari. The human approach seemed reckless, unscientific, almost primitive. But much to his dismay, the reactor's hum did seem to settle after Sarah's intervention. Against all logic, her adjustment had worked. Over the next few hours, Talax's team watched with mounting disbelief as the humans went about their tasks, solving minor issues in ways that defied every rule in the book. Each time they used an unconventional method, the aliens braced for disaster, only to see the humans succeed in the most unexpected ways. At one point, another human named Jake noticed a minor fluctuation on one of the reactor's auxiliary panels. Without hesitation, he pulled a small object from his pocket, a screwdriver of some sort, and began tightening bolts with what seemed like a casual flick of the wrist. Talax couldn't restrain himself any longer. "Human Jake, is this safe? The panel is sensitive to even the slightest imbalance." Jake glanced over with a reassuring smile. "Relax, Talax. I've done this 1,000 times. Little adjustments like these keep everything in line." Talax felt a mix of admiration and anxiety. The humans operated with such confidence, even in the face of potential danger, yet their methods were unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Protocols, carefully calibrated instruments, these were the foundations of his work. But the humans seemed to regard those foundations as mere guidelines, bending them as they saw fit. After several more hours of observations, Talax couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. He approached Sarah, who was busy monitoring the reactor's output, her expression as calm as if she were supervising a routine maintenance task. "Human Sarah," he began carefully, "may I ask, do humans always approach critical situations with such flexibility?" Sarah chuckled, raising an eyebrow. "Pretty much. If we followed every rule to the letter, we'd never get anything done. Sometimes you just have to trust your instincts, improvise a little." "Improvise," Talax repeated, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. In his world, improvisation was akin to recklessness, a recipe for disaster. "Yes," Sarah replied, a hint of pride in her voice. "Improvisation is what keeps us alive. You wouldn't believe how often we have to make do with whatever's on hand. Duct tape, coffee, maybe a paperclip if we're lucky." She laughed, but Talax could see that there was a seriousness behind her words. He returned to his team, feeling both bewildered and intrigued. The humans seemed to thrive on a mixture of adaptability and intuition, solving problems without the rigid structure that he and his species relied on. Part of him wanted to dismiss their methods as luck, but the results were undeniable. As the human team continued their work, their presence began to spark a quiet revolution among the alien researchers. Conversations sprang up between Talax's scientists as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. One researcher murmured, Maybe there's something we're missing. They're doing everything wrong, yet they succeed." Another scientist, deep in thought, added, "Perhaps it's not about following every rule perfectly, but about responding to the situation as it unfolds." Talax found himself at a crossroads. His entire career had been built on the belief that order and discipline were the keys to survival. But these humans, with their improvisation and strange tools, were challenging everything he thought he knew. By the time the inspection was complete, Talax's mind was awash with questions. As Sarah and her team left the reactor room, they waved casually, as if they hadn't just turned galactic science on its head. "Thanks for letting us lend a hand, Talax," Sarah called over her shoulder. "We'll be around if you need us." Talax nodded, his respect for these strange, resilient beings growing with each passing moment. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps their chaotic approach held a lesson he could learn. His team, too, was beginning to view the humans with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. The next few days would reveal just how vital that adaptability was, as unexpected crises would soon challenge both human and alien alike. And this time, Talax knew that he'd be watching the humans' unorthodox methods a little more closely. As the humans wrapped up their inspection of the reactor, a sudden alarm blared through the station, echoing off the metallic walls. The alien researchers froze, their eyes widening in shock and fear. Talax's eyes darted to the warning lights flashing red on every control panel. "A containment breach," a panicked voice shouted over the intercom. "Experimental biohazard material has leaked into the atmospheric systems. All personnel initiate lockdown protocols immediately." Chaos ensued. Alien scientists scrambled to their stations, hastily keying in shutdown commands and erecting containment barriers. Their movements were precise but frantic, guided by strict protocols drilled into them from their training. To them, this was the nightmare scenario they had meticulously prepared for. And even then, the terror was unmistakable on every face. In the middle of this frenzy, the humans looked calm. "Oh, containment breach?" Sarah said, raising an eyebrow and glancing at her team with a grin. "Well, guess it's time to roll up our sleeves." Talax's jaw dropped. "Human Sarah, do you not understand the gravity of this situation? Our containment protocols—" But Sarah was already moving, gesturing to her team, who nodded as if they had just been briefed on a casual task rather than a life-threatening hazard. One of them opened a bag and pulled out various items: a roll of duct tape, a multi-purpose tool, and, bizarrely, a thermos of coffee. Talax stammered, You cannot possibly be thinking of handling this yourselves. The protocols require complete evacuation and lockdown." Jake, one of the human team members, winked at Talax. "Evacuation? That's just going to make the problem bigger. Don't worry, we got this." With remarkable speed, the human team went to work, sealing the ventilation ducts and patching leaks with duct tape as they moved. They communicated in short, confident bursts, using a mixture of jargon and everyday phrases that left the aliens bewildered. Every task was handled with practiced efficiency, as though containment breaches were a part of their daily routine. One alien researcher, observing the humans from behind a sealed barrier, whispered, This can't possibly work. They're using tape and coffee. This defies every protocol we have." Sarah noticed his skeptical gaze and gave him a thumbs up. "Relax. On Earth, we call this improvising. It's quicker than setting up a whole containment lockdown, and frankly, it's more effective in a pinch." Another scientist, visibly distressed, turned to Talax. "Chief, shouldn't we stop them? This goes against everything we've been trained to do." Talax was caught in a dilemma. His instincts screamed at him to halt the humans, to follow the protocols that had been established to protect them all. But he couldn't deny the effectiveness of their actions. Every patch, every adjustment they made, seemed to stabilize the atmospheric systems, and the breach alarms slowly began to diminish in volume. To the aliens' disbelief, the humans had managed to contain the biohazard leak in a fraction of the time it would have taken to complete the protocol-driven lockdown. As the alarms faded, the aliens emerged cautiously from their barriers, exchanging stunned glances. One of the human team members, named Lisa, dusted her hands off and smirked at the silent crowd of aliens. Piece of cake. Talax's mind was reeling. Everything he knew about crisis management had just been upended. Approaching Sarah, he struggled to find the right words. I don't understand. How did you manage that without any containment procedures? Sarah shrugged. Sometimes strict procedures get in the way. You just need to assess the situation, use what's on hand, and solve the problem. Simple as that. Talax looked down, his carefully constructed worldview beginning to crack. For all their meticulous protocols, his team hadn't been able to respond as quickly or as effectively as the humans with their improvisation. Could it be that flexibility and quick thinking were as valuable as protocol? But just as he was about to speak, another alarm echoed through the station, a structural failure warning. This time, it was the reactor itself that was in danger, with a potential overload threatening the entire station. The aliens froze in fear, their protocols ill-prepared for two simultaneous crises. Before anyone else could react, Sarah grinned, muttering under her breath, "Double feature today, huh?" She gestured to her team, and they were already moving, splitting up to tackle the new crisis with the same casual confidence that had left the aliens bewildered moments before. As the humans sprinted toward the reactor, Talax trailed behind, desperately trying to keep up. "Human Sarah, please. This is a highly sensitive matter. One wrong move and—" Sarah waved off his concern. "Don't worry, Talax. We've done this sort of thing before. Probably not exactly the same, but close enough." Inside the reactor room, the heat was intense, and the alarms were deafening. The reactor was clearly reaching critical levels. Talax's heart raced, his mind racing through protocols that would take hours to execute properly. But the humans, undeterred, began examining the reactor with practiced ease. "All right, reactor overheating. No problem," muttered Jake, tapping on his communicator. "Let's rig up a temporary coolant bypass." Talax couldn't believe what he was hearing. "A bypass? That's not in any of the manuals. That would require—" "About 5 minutes if we do it our way," Jake interrupted. Already assembling a makeshift cooling system with tubing and equipment the aliens considered non-essential. The alien scientists watched, their eyes wide with horror and awe, as the humans crafted a solution on the spot. To them, it seemed as though the humans were ignoring all the dangers, all the complexities. Yet somehow, their patchwork coolant system began to stabilize the reactor. One alien, watching from behind a panel, murmured, "I don't understand." "We spend years training for situations like this, and they handle it with tape and scraps." Another whispered back, Perhaps they know something we don't." As the reactor's alarms finally silenced, Sarah turned to the aliens, giving them a satisfied nod. "Crisis averted. Told you we'd handle it." Talax, his voice barely a whisper, said, "But how? You broke every rule, and it worked." Sarah patted him on the shoulder. "Sometimes, Talax, you gotta break a few rules to get the job done. You'd be amazed what you can accomplish with a little creativity and, yeah, a lot of duct tape." The humans departed the reactor room, leaving behind a stunned team of alien scientists. Talax's beliefs were shaken to the core. Everything he had been taught about safety, control, and protocols seemed inadequate in the face of the humans' adaptability. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the reality he'd just witnessed with the structured, rule-bound world he'd always known. As he regrouped with his team, another scientist approached him, their voice filled with awe. "Chief, is it possible that their methods are superior to ours?" Talax hesitated. He wanted to dismiss the idea, to reaffirm his belief in the strict protocols that had defined his career. But he couldn't deny the results. The humans had faced two potentially catastrophic crises and solved them with a confidence and efficiency that bordered on instinct. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps the galaxy had underestimated humanity. And he wasn't alone. His team, who had watched the humans with suspicion, now exchanged glances filled with admiration and curiosity. Was it possible that there was more to survival than rules and routines? But before Talax could ponder the implications, yet another alarm blared. A third crisis was unfolding, this time in the navigation systems. The station's trajectory had been altered, and if not corrected, they would drift dangerously close to the black hole they were orbiting. The alien team, rattled and uncertain, looked to Talax for guidance. But before he could issue a command, he heard Sarah's voice, confident and unshaken. All right, we're up. One more crisis to fix before coffee break, people. As the humans raced to the navigation controls, Talax could only watch in awe, his once unshakable confidence in protocol now replaced by a reluctant admiration for the humans' unyielding adaptability. After the humans had resolved the navigation crisis, once again without following a single established protocol, Talax and his team sat in silence, their minds reeling from everything they had just witnessed. The humans had approached 3 separate life-threatening crises with what seemed like reckless improvisation, and yet each time they succeeded with astonishing speed and efficiency. No amount of training, procedures, or calculations had prepared the alien scientists for what they had seen. Talax gathered his researchers in the observation room, their usually calm demeanor replaced with an air of uncertainty. They sat in a tight circle, each one struggling to make sense of the day's events. Finally, Talax spoke, his voice subdued. "We have followed the protocols of the Galactic Research Council for our entire careers. Every calculation, every step has been measured, documented, and enforced. But today we witness something that defies explanation." One of the junior scientists, Sarava, nervously cleared her throat. "Chief Talax, do you think the humans' methods are superior?" The question hung in the air, filling the room with a tense silence. Talax knew that admitting even the possibility would be seen as heresy among his peers, but he couldn't deny the facts. The humans had succeeded where traditional methods might have failed. Their adaptability, their confidence, their willingness to act without hesitation, it all defied the logic Talax had dedicated his life to. Another scientist, Kalari, spoke up, his voice a mixture of awe and apprehension. "I once heard that humans evolved on Earth not by eliminating danger, but by embracing it. They thrive in chaos, where most species would perish. Perhaps their survival depends on their ability to adapt in ways we cannot understand." Talax's mind spun as he considered the implications. If what Kalari said was true, then everything he had believed about the nature of survival and intelligence would need to be reevaluated. "But we are scientists," Talax said slowly, almost as if trying to reassure himself. "Science is about control, about precision. The humans seem to disregard those principles entirely." Sarava shook her head. "Or maybe they follow a different kind of logic, a logic that doesn't rely on rigid rules but on intuition, perhaps." The room fell silent again as each alien scientist considered this. Could it be that their approach to science was incomplete? The thought was as terrifying as it was intriguing. Meanwhile, Sarah and her team were taking a well-earned break in the station's recreational area. Laughing and exchanging stories about the day's events, they seemed completely at ease, as if saving a space station from multiple disasters was just another day on the job. One of them cracked a joke about Tuesday crisis drills back on Earth, eliciting a chorus of laughter. From across the room, Talax watched them, marveling at their apparent lack of fear. For them, the extraordinary was ordinary. The impossible was just another problem to solve. Talax decided to approach them. He walked over to Sarah, who greeted him with a friendly grin. "Hey, Chief Talax, enjoying the show?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Human Sarah, you and your team, you approach danger as though it is commonplace. How is this possible?" Sarah took a sip of her coffee, considering his question thoughtfully. "Well, it's all about perspective. On Earth, we grew up with danger. Our planet isn't exactly friendly. You either learn to deal with the unexpected or you don't make it. We've had to adapt to things you'd probably consider unthinkable." "Unthinkable?" Talax echoed, intrigued. "Yeah," Sarah replied with a nod. "Hurricanes, volcanoes, tsunamis, wild animals, disease, all of it just part of life back home. So we learn to roll with the punches, find solutions that aren't in the manual." She paused, glancing at her coffee. "Maybe that's why we're so comfortable in situations like today. We don't have the luxury of a perfectly controlled environment." Talax felt a wave of realization wash over him. To the humans, chaos was normal. They had evolved in an environment where survival wasn't guaranteed, where adaptability wasn't a choice but a necessity. While his own species, and countless others across the galaxy, had cultivated lives of control and predictability, Humanity had embraced the unknown. One of the alien scientists, unable to hold back any longer, stepped forward and asked, "Human Sarah, do you ever fear failure?" Sarah looked at him, surprised by the question. "Of course we do. But fear doesn't help us survive. When things go sideways, you can't sit around being scared. You have to act, try something, even if it's risky." Talax pondered this. To him, risk was something to be minimized, controlled, avoided whenever possible. But these humans embraced it, even thrived in it. Could it be that they had discovered something beyond science, a way of thinking that defied conventional wisdom? As Sarah and her team returned to their work, Talax gathered his researchers once more. "We may be witnessing a form of intelligence that we don't fully understand," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Perhaps their strength lies not in calculation, but in their willingness to adapt, to embrace chaos." Kalari nodded slowly. "Perhaps we should study this human adaptability more closely. It could be the key to understanding what makes them so resilient." But Sarava shook her head, her expression pensive. "Can adaptability be taught, Chief Talax, or is it something unique to their species?" Talax considered this. Could they learn to adopt this flexible mindset, or was it something that only humans could embody, a product of their unique evolutionary path? The implications were vast and complex, challenging everything he had believed about intelligence and survival. In the quiet hours of that evening, as the station returned to normal, Talax found himself staring out into the void of space, his mind racing with questions. Humans had shattered his concept of order, forcing him to confront the possibility that the galaxy's most advanced beings might still have much to learn about the nature of survival. And somewhere, deep within him, a spark of curiosity began to grow. For the first time, he wondered if embracing the unexpected, accepting the risks, and letting go of control could open doors he had never imagined. He turned to his team, a new resolve forming. "From tomorrow onward, we will study the humans, not only as allies but as mentors. Their way of thinking may unlock new paths for us, a path not defined by caution, but by courage." And with that, the Galactic Research Station's mission had changed. No longer a sterile environment of cold protocols and rigid logic, it had become a place of exploration, where the alien scientists would begin to challenge the boundaries of their own understanding, inspired by the strange, resilient species known as humanity. As the humans continued their duties on the station, a newfound respect and quiet admiration grew among the alien researchers. They watched closely, studying every interaction, every improvised solution, and each seemingly reckless decision the humans made. But before they had a chance to truly process what they were learning, the ultimate test of human adaptability and alien protocol collided in a catastrophic way. It started with a minor alert. The power core, which had been stable for years, began fluctuating erratically. Talax and his team immediately ran diagnostic scans, but within minutes it became clear that this was no simple malfunction. A critical overload was building within the core, one that could threaten the entire station if not contained. The alien scientists quickly assembled, their expressions tense and fearful. Talax's voice trembled as he addressed the team. "This is unprecedented. We need to follow the emergency shutdown procedures immediately. The core must be cooled down slowly to avoid a full meltdown." Sarah and her team arrived just in time to hear the announcement. Assessing the situation, she glanced over at her fellow humans and raised an eyebrow. "Looks like it's time to get creative, team." Talax turned to her, panic in his eyes. "Human Sarah, this is not the time for improvisation. A core overload requires precise and careful handling. Any deviation could result in total annihilation." But Sarah only grinned, her calm composure a stark contrast to the alien's terror. "If we follow your procedures, we'll be out of time before the core cools. Sometimes, Talax, you have to be willing to take a leap." Ignoring his protest, the human sprang into action. Jake, one of Sarah's team members, pulled out a handheld device and began rerouting power away from the core. Lisa, another human, assessed the coolant system, muttering to herself as she rigged a makeshift cooling line with spare tubing and, much to the alien's horror, another roll of duct tape. Talax could hardly contain his disbelief. You can't fix a reactor core with duct tape and spare parts. That's madness. Sarah gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Madness? Maybe, but it works. She motioned to her team. All right, let's reroute the coolant, bypass the overload sequence, and stabilize this core the Earth way. As the humans worked, alarms blared around them, and the core's readings fluctuated wildly. Talax's team stood frozen, their carefully crafted protocols rendered useless in the face of a rapidly deteriorating situation. The humans, however, moved swiftly and decisively, adjusting on the fly as if they were conducting an intricate dance in the midst of chaos. One alien scientist, Jakari, finally snapped out of his shock and approached Sarah, his voice shaking. "Human Sarah, what is the plan here? How do you know this will work?" Sarah glanced at him, a hint of humor in her eyes. "Honestly, we don't. But we know it has a better chance than sitting back and doing nothing. Sometimes you've just got to act." Jakari's eyes widened, but he nodded slowly, as though understanding for the first time the core of human resilience. It wasn't certainty that drove them, nor even courage. It was a willingness to move forward without all the answers, to trust in their own abilities and adapt to whatever came next. Just as it seemed like the humans were gaining control over the situation, a new crisis emerged. The sudden power rerouting had triggered a massive surge in the external systems, putting the station's shields at risk. If the shields failed, the station would be exposed to deadly cosmic radiation. Talax turned to his scientists. "Engage backup shields, quickly!" But the backup systems were already overloading, and the station's mainframe was buckling under the strain. In the face of yet another life-threatening crisis, Talax's team froze, paralyzed by the lack of protocols for such an unprecedented event. Once again, it was the humans who acted. Jake ran to the control console, typing furiously as he redirected power from non-essential systems to reinforce the shields. Sarah instructed another team member to initiate a manual override, rerouting energy to stabilize the power core and keep the shields from failing. "Jake, we're gonna need a workaround here," Sarah called out. Jake grinned, a hint of excitement in his eyes. "Already on it. I'll divert power from the secondary comms array. It'll be rough, but it'll hold." Talax watched, torn between horror and awe, as the humans overrode his team's carefully crafted systems with quick, decisive keystrokes. His heart pounded as he witnessed them shutting down non-critical operations, rerouting power, and improvising in ways that defied every protocol he knew. You're risking everything," he whispered, unable to comprehend their boldness. Sarah shrugged. "Sometimes that's what it takes to save everything." With the shields barely holding and the core stabilized just enough to buy them time, the humans took a collective breath. But their reprieve was short-lived. Another alarm blared, this one signaling a buildup of plasma energy in the main thrusters. If it went unchecked, the plasma would ignite, creating a chain reaction that could tear the station apart. Talax, feeling utterly helpless, turned to Sarah, his voice filled with a newfound desperation. Is there anything that can be done?" Sarah nodded, determination etched into her face. "There's always something we can try." As her team scrambled to address the thruster issue, Sarah turned to Talax, her tone serious. "We need every hand we can get. Your team knows these systems inside and out. They can help us, if they're willing to take a chance." For a long moment, Talax hesitated. He had spent his life obeying procedures, relying on careful calculations, minimizing risks. But now, faced with the human's indomitable spirit, he realized that following protocols might mean losing everything. Slowly he nodded. "All right, human Sarah, tell us what to do." With Sarah's guidance, Talax and his team joined the humans, working side by side to stabilize the thrusters. They followed instructions to the best of their ability, setting aside their fear and learning to act swiftly, improvising when necessary. One alien scientist, seeing Sarah use her coffee thermos as part of a makeshift tool to hold a cable in place, muttered, "This is madness." But Talax corrected him, a hint of admiration in his voice. "No, this is survival." As the humans and aliens worked together, the mood shifted. What had begun as fear and uncertainty transformed into a shared sense of purpose. The humans' confidence and resilience were infectious, and the aliens began to see the value in adaptability. in trusting themselves and each other, even when the future was uncertain. Finally, after what felt like hours of tense, non-stop labor, the core stabilized, the shields held firm, and the plasma buildup in the thrusters was neutralized. The station's alarms quieted, and a deep silence fell over the room. The aliens slumped with relief, exchanging glances of disbelief and exhaustion. Talax felt a surge of gratitude and respect as he looked at Sarah and her team, who were exhausted but smiling. "Human Sarah," he said, his voice filled with emotion. You have shown us something we could never have understood on our own." Sarah chuckled, giving him a friendly nudge. "Glad we could help, Chief. That's what teamwork's all about." Talax glanced at his team, who nodded in silent agreement. They had all felt it, that shift, that spark. Humanity's unique approach to survival had not only saved them, but had shown them a new way of thinking, a new perspective on what it meant to thrive in a chaotic universe. As the humans prepared to leave, Talax gathered his team for one last word. "Today we witnessed something extraordinary. The humans showed us that sometimes survival is not about following every rule, but about understanding that there are times when adaptability, courage, and a little bit of madness can make the impossible possible." He looked around at his team, each one visibly changed, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. "From this day forward, we will not just study the unknown. We will face it, adapt to it, and learn from those who embrace it. We will honor what we have learned from humanity and strive to be as resilient, as bold as they are." Sarah, overhearing, smiled and raised her coffee mug in a silent toast. "Cheers to that, Talax." With that, the human team departed, leaving behind a group of alien scientists who had been forever changed. No longer bound by rigid protocols, they now carried within them a spark of curiosity, a willingness to face the unknown head-on, inspired by the strange and indomitable species they had come to admire. As the human ship departed, the alien scientists stood in silence, watching the vessel shrink to a distant point against the backdrop of stars. They were exhausted, still reeling from the adrenaline of the multiple crises they had faced, yet a profound sense of change lingered in the air. Talax felt it, as did every member of his team. They had seen something extraordinary, something that defied every rule, every belief they had held about survival and intelligence. Humanity's methods had initially seemed careless, reckless, even foolish. But now, Talax could see the deeper truth. Humans possessed an adaptability, a resourcefulness, a resilience that was, in its own way, more powerful than the most advanced technology or the strictest protocol. After a moment, Talax gathered his team for a debrief in the main observation room. He looked around at each face, seeing the fatigue mixed with newfound respect and awe. The experience had clearly left an indelible mark on them all. "What we witnessed today was a revelation," Talax began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Humans, they operate on a different level. They don't rely solely on calculation or caution. They trust themselves, their instincts, and each other in ways that defy our understanding." One scientist, Sarava, nodded. "It's as though they believe survival itself is a form of art. Each crisis they faced became a moment for them to create, to innovate in ways we could never predict." Another researcher, Kalari, spoke up, her voice tinged with emotion. "I never thought I'd say this, but perhaps there is more to survival than simply avoiding danger. Humans seem to embrace it, to use it as an opportunity." Talax took a deep breath, realizing how profoundly his own beliefs had shifted. "We have been taught to think of survival as something that requires perfect control. But the humans showed us that sometimes survival means letting go of control and facing the unknown with courage." As they continued to discuss the humans' impact on them, a quiet resolve began to settle over the group. Each scientist felt an unspoken promise to honor what they had learned, to integrate the humans' resilience and adaptability into their own practices. It was clear that the Galactic Research Council's strict adherence to protocol would no longer be enough for them. They had glimpsed a new way of thinking, a broader perspective on what it meant to thrive in a vast, unpredictable galaxy. Talax gazed out at the stars, his mind racing with possibilities. He had always believed that knowledge and survival were a matter of following established paths, of adhering to systems that had been tested and refined over centuries. But the humans had shown him that some paths could only be forged in the moment, without a map or a guarantee. Finally, he addressed his team once more. From this day forward, we will incorporate what we've learned from humanity. We will remain open to improvisation, to flexibility, and to the courage to take risks when necessary. We have seen that sometimes survival requires a little creativity and perhaps a little chaos. The scientists murmured in agreement, a sense of unity binding them in this new mission. The experience had humbled them, but it had also inspired them to seek out new horizons, to embrace the unknown not as something to fear, but as something to explore with curiosity and adaptability. Several days later, the Galactic Research Council called a meeting to discuss the events that had transpired on the research station. Talax and his team were summoned to provide a report. Standing before the council, Talax recounted the events in precise detail, the crises, the humans' unorthodox methods, and the undeniable effectiveness of their adaptability. One council member, a stoic figure named Vidar, raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Are you suggesting, Chief Researcher Talax, that we abandon our protocols in favor of improvisation?" Talax met the council member's gaze, his voice firm and calm. "I am suggesting, Vidar, that our protocols are not enough. The humans showed us that survival is not just a matter of following rules. It's about recognizing that the galaxy is full of uncertainties, and that to thrive, we must be willing to adapt, to trust our own instincts, and sometimes to innovate on the spot." The council members exchanged wary glances, clearly unsettled by the implications. For them, abandoning strict control was akin to abandoning their own identity. But as Talax spoke of the humans' courage, their resilience, and the remarkable ways they had turned disaster into triumph, a glimmer of understanding appeared in a few of their eyes. After the meeting, as Talax and his team returned to their station, he sensed a subtle shift in the air. Perhaps not all of the council members had been convinced, but a seed had been planted. The story of humanity's impact on the research station would continue to spread, challenging old beliefs and inspiring new conversations throughout the galaxy. As days turned into weeks, Talax and his team began to implement small changes in their own procedures, introducing elements of flexibility and encouraging creative problem-solving. They found themselves taking calculated risks, experimenting with new ideas, and perhaps most importantly, trusting each other in ways they had never done before. Their bond as a team grew stronger, and their confidence in their own abilities deepened. The impact of the humans' visit rippled outward, affecting not just Talax's team, but researchers across the galaxy who began to hear whispers of the remarkable events on the station. In time, new protocols emerged, not as rigid rules, but as guidelines that allowed for adaptability and resilience, honoring the balance between caution and courage. Talax often thought back to Sarah and her team, their laughter, their nonchalant courage, their ability to turn chaos into order. The humans had shown them that survival was not a destination, but a journey, a dynamic dance with the unknown. One day, as Talax was reviewing data from a recent experiment, he received an unexpected message from Sarah. It was a brief note, just a few words, but it brought a smile to his face. "Remember, if all else fails, there's always duct tape." He chuckled, feeling a warmth he hadn't known before. The humans had left them with more than just a few unconventional ideas. They had left them with a legacy, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and filled with infinite possibilities. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was something worth embracing. Turning to his team, Talax felt a surge of pride. Let's keep moving forward, not just as scientists, but as explorers, as creators. Let's honor what we learned from the humans and forge our own path through the unknown. And as they continued their work, the spirit of resilience and adaptability, a gift from humanity, remained with them, guiding them through every challenge and every triumph that lay ahead. Months had passed since the humans left the research station, but the memory of their visit remained vivid in the minds of Talax and his team. The once rigid and formal station now hummed with a renewed sense of purpose and curiosity, each researcher carrying a spark of the human's unique resilience and adaptability. The Galactic Research Council, initially hesitant, had begun to notice subtle shifts among the station's scientists. Reports trickled in, describing how teams were experimenting with more flexible methods, making decisions based on real-time situations rather than rigid protocols. And, surprisingly, these new approaches were yielding impressive results. In fact, the Council was so intrigued that they decided to launch an initiative to study unconventional problem-solving techniques, carefully analyzing the human-inspired methods emerging from the station. To their astonishment, they found that these adaptive approaches were not only effective, but sometimes more efficient than traditional protocols. Slowly, the Council began incorporating elements of human-style improvisation into their own training programs, a quiet acknowledgement of the human's influence. Meanwhile, Talax had integrated new practices into his team's daily routines. The scientists now held brief, informal meetings to discuss ongoing projects, encouraging open dialogue and collaboration. They even instituted a new ritual, inspired by Sarah and her team, creative problem-solving exercises, where each scientist was given a random object, be it a simple tool, a piece of discarded equipment, or even a cup of the now beloved coffee, and tasked with using it in an unexpected way to solve hypothetical crises. The sessions often ended in laughter, and Talax couldn't help but feel that these exercises were shaping them into a stronger, more cohesive unit. The station also introduced a new emblem, a small silver emblem of duct tape, a nod to the human's inventive spirit. It was a reminder of their unique ability to face the unexpected with humor, confidence, and a certain irreverent courage. One evening, as Talax sat in his quarters reviewing research data, he received a secure message from the Council. He opened it, expecting a routine report, but instead found a classified memo outlining an ambitious project, a project inspired by humanity. The Council had decided to embark on an exploration mission to a sector known for unpredictable cosmic phenomena, a place where no controlled environment could be maintained. The mission would require unprecedented adaptability, and Talax's team had been selected to lead it, using the human-inspired techniques they had developed over the past months. Reading the memo, Talax felt a swell of pride and excitement. This mission would be their chance to prove that adaptability and creativity could stand alongside traditional scientific methods, that embracing the unexpected was as valuable as following protocol. It was an honor, but more than that, it was an opportunity to continue the legacy left by Sarah and her team. Before embarking on the new mission, Talax called his team together for one final briefing. Standing before them, he held up the small silver duct tape emblem that now adorned his uniform. Today, he began, we embark on a journey that will test everything we have learned. We will face challenges that no protocol can predict, and we will be asked to make decisions without certainty. But we will carry with us the spirit of resilience, creativity, and adaptability that we learned from humanity. We will honor their legacy by continuing to grow, to adapt, and to face the unknown. The team nodded, their expressions a blend of determination and pride. They knew that they were part of something bigger than themselves, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of a galaxy growing wiser and more connected. As they prepared for departure, Talax received one last message from Earth, a recorded note from Sarah herself. He played it over the station's comm system so the entire team could hear. Hey, Talax and crew, just wanted to say good luck on your mission. Remember, the galaxy's a big, weird place, and it doesn't play by the rules. But if you get stuck, just take a breath, think outside the box, and maybe grab a roll of duct tape. It's gotten us out of plenty of jams, and I'm sure it'll do the same for you. Cheers. The message ended, leaving a sense of warmth and unity in the room. With a smile, Talax closed the comm and turned to his team. Let's make them proud, he said, and with that the station's engines roared to life, propelling them forward into the uncharted sector. As they hurtled toward the unknown, Talax felt a sense of calm and confidence, knowing they were prepared not because they had all the answers, but because they were ready to face whatever lay ahead, with courage, curiosity, and the human spirit that had forever changed them. The galaxy awaited, and for the first time, they were ready to greet it not with fear, but with open minds and resilient hearts.